All right, before we took a short break, I think we all knew Mheshimiwa Mong'are. And the issue of wage bill now also is consternating, that we can see both sides of the divide, the opposition and also the current regime, the Jubilee administration, is alluding to the fact that they are shocked at the ballooning wage bill. But this is not, it shouldn't be a shock at all, because we've been here before. Austerity measures were taken before, but the president taking the 20% pay cut, and he was asking also other leaders to do that, the CEOs as well. Some leaders did, some did not. So this shouldn't really come from the left side for the president. He knew from the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. On the issues of those that wage bill, there's a lot of bankruptcy in both the ruling regime and the opposition. Look at them. They've been there. Who have set up these standards? Who laid this foundation of the floating wage bill? It's a graduation of the bankruptcy of leadership for as many as maybe 20 when Kenya attained liberal democracy, so to say. Mm-hmm. So some of these people are pretending around that they are surprised, they are done what. Even that cut by the president, I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, that is not effected. Mm-hmm. How do you effect my cut, which is constitutional, and we have not changed that constitution? Mm-hmm. Those are just rhetorics to wink poor Kenyans. That cut for the president and the ministries is not been effected. The only commission mandated to do that work is the CRC. Mm-hmm. So, Debarl, as we are sitting here in the panel, all of us earning the same salary, if I decide to have a cut, that's my philanthropic work, which I can maybe releasing after I receive that salary, I surrender it. So those gimmicks given 2 years by the president is not even working. There is no cut. But those cuts, they are receiving those monies in their accounts, even if you check. So it was just a gimmick. It's only the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, which is mandated to come up with a formula which is legal for the paper.
But the legislators as well, they've been frustrating the Salaries and Remuneration Commission as well.
Sarah Serem became an arm of a government. She's been behaving as if she's an appendage of the Jubilee regime. She's not been magnanimous enough. That's why I told you 4 years
only when the legislators want to actually increase the salaries.
No.
She's become now an appendage.
Debarl, I was the first member of parliament 4 years ago to say that I'm not interested in the salary. I'm a lawyer. I can get my means to live on. I want to do social work. That's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. So what has Sarah Serem done for the public service? Forget about the members of parliament, which is really governed by the Parliamentary Service Commission. That's a different commission. What has he done in terms of harmonizing the salaries and giving recommendations for the way the protected wage bill is going to be dealt with? 4 years down the line, she's coming up with an interim report. And this president is used with the interim reports. You remember in December, when he was addressing Kenyans from Mombasa, he receives an interim report from the DPP on how some corruption is going to be done. An interim report for the president that the DPP is going to open a file. And since then, nothing happens. I'm a lawyer. We fought some of those things keenly. That's why I'm saying that the regime of Jubilee has let down Kenyans, and it's time we wake up. Look at a simple one on the issues of famine and drought, for instance. Mm-hmm. The Meteorological Department told Kenyans 15 months ago that we are going to have drought. The Meteorological Department is a department of government. What did government do? Government waited for the herds of cattle to die and then start running around like endless chickens saying that, oh, we need monies. A government with a plan which has been told by a department that this is what we expect. I expected they could have just looked for a way of mitigating that factor until we have the problem. Look at the Kain Dam. 15 months ago it was overflowing. When the meteorological department overflowing and water was going to west. Mm-hmm. Instead of preserving that kind of water, if government has planned, it doesn't have to wait for a disaster to happen, and then we start running around.
All right. So right now we need 12.6 billion shillings, and we have now a pail in hand to the international community to actually raise this particular. Isn't it a shame that yes, the president also skirted around this issue of drought as well, Kassim?
I think
was it handled in this particular speech yesterday, according to your own estimation?
I don't think it was.
Yes.
And
that is glaring.
It
People who have died so far, around 10 in the country.
Debarl, it was not even mentioned.
It was not even mentioned.
It was not even mentioned. And
so how could we just gloss over, and we have such a glaring situation? We need 12.6 billion shillings, and yet we're talking about other things like, you know, the infrastructure, how robust it has been at the SGR. Yet this is what is really affecting the Mwananchi.
Debarl, we have, I want to confirm that we have a good president. However, my concern is about the presidential handlers. And these guys have goofed all along, Debarl. You remember when the president had to turn his flight back home at one time?
Yes, when he was crossing over Yemen.
When he was crossing over Yemen.
Yes.
And again, recently, you remember when the head of state said that Mombasa account received 40 billion, when in the real sense, Mombasa account received 19 billion. And there have been a series of them over and over and over. And I think for the sake of this country and for the sake of our chief executive, I think if he makes it and my colleague here does not succeed, then maybe he will have to do something about his back room so that things can be able to move. Debarl, on the wage bill issue, it's a welcome idea. However, the only challenge I have, and I can hear from my learned colleague here, is that it's an interim report. Just like the other one of corruption, that was an interim report. Debarl, history has it that some of these things do never see the light of the day. Because you could see here my colleague here, who is at the heart of things in the Senate, saying that it's neither here nor there. It might not be implemented. Because one, Debarl, the cost of living, as I said earlier, has not been looked at all. Strong unions. Recently, I was being told by my brother Atwoli that now the court wants to put in place a mechanism because of the high cost of living. They want to request the government to increase the wage bill by 22%. The inflation, Debarl, is now at 10%. Now, where are we going as a nation? Because if these things are interrogated, then the head of state speech will have focused, first of all, if it's a balanced scorecard, to the stakeholders who are the Wananchi. What touching areas that it's pinching them. Then the financials. How would we be able to cut this high debt burden that we have? And then he would move forward to the internal reorganization and say, look, these guys are too many. In fact, Debarl, if 2%, that is the 700,000 population of Kenya, and 50% of the entire wage, then where are we heading as a nation? Because there's a problem of systemic allowances that were considered because of these things. It's time we reviewed our constitution, how far we are, and how we need to move to the next level. As a business community, we are concerned at this happening of things because, and with due respect, the head of state is our patron. But we would wish to say that if drought, ethnic clashes, I'm surprised that we have soldiers in Somalia, and then our policemen have been overrun in Baringo by bandits. For God's sake, even the deputy president was there looking helpless.
Well, we'll come back to that, to the issue of security. Let's tackle down the issues of the wage bill right now. Yes, and the state of also the debt burden that we have in this country. Just the other day, we saw there was good tidings for the public servants, right? The civils
double salary.
They doubled their salaries, and we are waiting now also to see the cabinet secretary also getting some good tidings as well in terms of their salaries as well. So is this a double speak that is coming from the president? Yes, we scale down on the MPs, yet the CSs and the public servants, they are increasing their salaries.
Now, my comment on that would be so simple. When it comes to the issue of public wage bill, you can't discuss public wage bill without discussing about the size of government in terms of the numbers. I don't know if we remember, I keep saying we just need to keep track of everything said. Why do we forget in 2013 the government came in with a very clear agenda of rationalization? In fact, when you mentioned Anne Waiguru, she was the CS in charge of that, and I remember they had said the first 3 months they would do was just to do an audit of the government bureaucracy.
Yes.
Now, something so simple, we did a constitution change in 2010, and we had two systems of government, the national and county. Have we not been curious enough to ask that despite the two levels of government, despite some devolved functions, the number of public servants remain the same? Doesn't that just prick our conscience and say there's something wrong? To the extent that for provincial administration, you can imagine a very straightforward executive thing had to be sorted out through the court. And the government had to go around and in all instances maintain the whole structure. So why did we have the county governments? Something even peculiar enough. The budget. that now that the health function, even one of the reasons why the doctor's strike was complicated is people forget that the main challenge stems from the fact that as the health function was devolved, but did that go along with the money?
The funds. Yeah.
Not at all. Look at the funds the health ministry has been allocated over the years. Let's just say pre-2013 and after 2013. Has there been any, say, a significant change? Not necessarily. Why is it that the health ministry still has most of the money? Yet, if you look at this doctor strike, the main agenda was the county governments are their primary employers, which should be true. Then why don't we not devolve? And if we devolve, why don't you reduce the bureaucracy up here? So the first thing, according to me, for you to have a clear discussion and agenda and to show that you want to reduce the wage bill, start first by cutting down and having a rationalized government bureaucracy, both at the national and the county. Then secondly, the main thing I think the senator had mentioned that per year we lose up to 300 to 400 billion in terms of wastages and corruption. In 2013 again, the government made it clear. And I remember the deputy president was very passionate about that. He kept telling us, there's no single day the government is going to buy a pen again for 100 shillings. Has that changed? No. Has that procurement changed? So if we can save, look at how much we're losing out of wastages, and in fact, most surprising if funds go back to the consolidated account. When you have such wastages and theft, then it means if we could just have a rationalized public service, if we could utilize our revenue well, then importantly we can therefore have, in fact we can easily have a managed wage bill. And lastly, it's a question of baking a bigger pie. You know, we fight over the revenue we raise, and I'll remind you that in the financial year 2015-2016, the Kenya Revenue Authority never met its target. And in fact, this year they have been pushed hard that you have to meet your targets. Why have we not also concentrated on begging a bigger pie in terms of how do we not expand our economy, have more, produce more? And you know, we should be a manufacturing country. So the more our economic growth, the more likely we can be able to sustain. Otherwise, whatever we are engaging in is more or less now what we call academic exercise. I'm pretty sure if right now you give a consultant to give you that. SRC, I thought they have been doing that for the last 5 years. But what SRC has been able to achieve at the moment, I think I'll give them a plus only when coming up with reports. But following through. In fact, we shouldn't have had the doctor strike if SRC had followed through their mandate. One of the key grievances of the doctors was that we've had meetings with these people over and over and over again. Most unions right now, if you remember the wordings of SOTN, the SecGen for KNUT, he made it clear that as per unions, their key enemy will be SRC. So you don't talk about wage bill. We have a commission, yes. In fact, my colleague made it clear that it has become an appendage of the government. If only they could run, I really remember the other one, the Commission of Revenue Allocation, CRA. I would credit them under the chairmanship of the former CBK governor, and you know he had tried as much as possible to write whatever, just to try operate as an independent commission. If SRC would do the same and just factor in these simple things, do we still have the same number of public servants as it was before 2013, even with the new constitution, even with the change of governance structure? If that is the case, so how comes we want to reduce the wage bill, yet we are not touching on that? Simple question.
Right, simple question, yes, and you also raised the question of rationalization of a government. And what also was conspicuously missing from his speech was the fact that we know there was a task force that was given the task of reforming the parastatals, right? Where is the report? If we're talking about wage bill, right? The president, and I mentioned this even earlier in this particular forum, the president went full steam ahead and even appointed chairman for some of his parastatals. Yet there was a report that was saying the prudent thing would be to collapse this parastatal so that actually we can take away the duplication that we have in the government. To be specific,
the report was done even by his own staff, Abdikadir Mohammed, my learned senior. And they did a report as early as 2014. So and they made it clear. In fact, I remember even in your nation opinion columns, we have the renowned writer, Jaindi Kisero, who kept saying, if only we could implement this report, where we consolidate the parastatals, those that are not working. And in fact, I remember that report was so far-reaching. At the end of the day, two things came out clearly. We have such a huge number of parastatals, we don't know what exactly they do, they can't account. And secondly, that report also recommended that if it is possible, beyond just the consolidation, we also need to consolidate government accounts. How many bank accounts does the government have? We've
Yes.
never asked that question. So yes, we have the reports, but as is always the case, and I think that is not something new since 1960s. Any academic or a consultant will tell you we are extremely good in churning out reports. That one I can tell you. The consultant will be paid, they'll do their job, they will
Right.
present, fanfare will be there.
Fantastic.
But how about doing it? Executive action.
All right,
That's
so,
what we need.
Samar, let's hear from you.
I think for me, it's, I like what the president suggested. We have 700,000 public servants consuming who are only 2% of us, our population, and consuming 50% of our GDP. So we have that cut, we get more funds, we rationalize the salaries for the middle and lower income civil servants like teachers, doctors, nurses, and we inject some of that money into the development projects. Now, we can also try to look at quick wins. You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look at the case of Germany, you know, industrialization. For me, my biggest concern is the youth bubble. You know, this youth bubble is going to burst if we don't take care of it, because they are trekking every day looking for jobs.
Yes.
We have an office in industrial area. Every day when I walk in, I see not less than 20 or 30 people waiting to get a kibarua for that day, you know? And they give in their IDs, and it's not me only, even our neighbors. So they give in their IDs with the hope that they'll find a job, and when only like 3 of them would be taken, the rest go home. They've wasted that day. By the time they trek to the next place, it's the time is out for taking in people. So the youth bubble is my biggest concern, and I think we need to relook at that very, very keenly. The German example is excellent. Industrialize, so that we can become a producing nation. Because if we become a producing nation, then we are able to give jobs to this youth. The Ministry of Industrialization is planning to create industries along the SGR.
Yes.
I think that would be a fantastic idea if it is implemented, and implemented very fast. Technical schools. We killed our technical institutions, which is a very bad thing that we did. I think our PS Mwinzi, she's trying really hard to get that back on track. You know, we are converting technical institutions to universities, and we are ending up with half-baked professionals in the, I mean, where you have to use your hands to actually do the artisans, yeah? We are missing that. We are having theoretic people, but you're missing the basic, yes, the practical ones. So I think tackling the technical institutions, the technical education institutions is very, very key to our development. In Kenya Vision 2030, if you look at the blueprint of Kenya Vision 2030, I agree with my colleague here that we have too many parastatals doing really, we don't really understand what they're doing. I think some of them can be merged, and we can gain from that more, and they'll be more productive.
So the question is why it hasn't been merged up to now, right?
Actually, it is in the blueprint of Vision 2030. Why it hasn't been implemented?
The president has a report himself,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So it really, you know, shocks us and confounds us that yes, he's really talking about we want to temper temper this particular wage bill, and since 2014, he's not effected this particular report.
Our country
so
suffers from
is it because
inaction.
of political patronage?
Executive
Because some of these appointees.
Executive in action, I would also argue differently, because I think we are also slaves of our constitution. You know, the constitution has cut down the powers for the president to very, very low. You know, I think we are actually slaves of our
So if the president is given the report, constitutionally, how is it bad from actually affecting this?
Allow me to digress, and I think that is one key argument that flies on the face. Any legal mind will tell you. Our country is still a presidential system. The president is the head of government and the head of state, commander-in-chief. Nothing has changed. You know, the argument that we came up with these particular institutions, that whatever the so-called independent constitution, whatever these offices,
the powers of the president.
They are not so different. In fact, to be specific, all the independent, all of them are now sucking up to the executive. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about SRC. Let's talk about CRA. Let's talk about even whatever, the one the one for the budget allocation. In fact, at the moment,
Control of budgets.
the only independent institution so far that we can say has been independent has been the Auditor General's office and maybe the DPP. In fact, from the start, DPP was seen not to be independent, but towards then, in fact, the last 1 year, they have done so well.
So,
EACC, we can't talk about EACC being independent if the same
not.
executive arm forced out the former officials. So let's talk about that. And I think that has been one key. In fact, to be specific, even we've seen the presidency clawing back some of that. The Inspector General was supposed to be exclusively appointed from the National Police Service Commission. An amendment was brought, the president is the one in charge. And if you remember, the argument at that time was that the president is constrained. I don't think so. To be specific, let's just talk about the issue of the reports. Who commissioned the report? Let's start from there. The report was primarily commissioned by the Office of the President. Who was the chair of the task force? That is his constitutional advisor, Abdikadir Mohammed.
Yes.
So where does the law
Stop
him from implementing? To be specific, you'd even be keen to forget that when we say chief executive officer and the leader of government, what exactly does it mean? And let me tell you, our president is the luckiest in the sense that he has an absolute majority in both houses of parliament. Every time Jubilee has wanted something passed in parliament, he takes a day. Whether it's by whatever means, they always do it. Even if they'll do it overnight, they always get it done. So let's talk about this power.
Yes.
Which powers are really lacking? So I don't buy that. And
Even if it's calling someone for
and
on the floor.
as a lawyer, I always feel bad everyone blaming the constitution. In fact, yesterday someone asked a simple question.
So the
corruption has been there even when we had the presidents before the 2010 constitution.
So when we
it
have
has
this
not
gesture of the president really flailing his hands and saying, "What do you want me to do?"
Debarl,
executive inaction.
Debarl,
He is actually speaking from both sides of the mouth because all the powers is with the presidency, according to the
He's
constitution.
the chief executive
He's the chief,
officer.
yes.
In fact, who appoints the cabinet secretaries?
He's the president.
The cabinet secretaries are there to implement his agenda, his policy. He can wake up today and tell the CS in charge of interior security, you are not performing, please step aside. There will be no questions, there will be no debate about it. In fact, the only institutions, or do we want the president to also appoint the chief justice? Do we want him to appoint the auditor general? Do we really want that? Not at all. But his area of action as the chief executive officer, for heaven's sake, the constitution in fact gives him the instruments, gives him the power. If he wanted to do it, in fact, if we are to compare, someone even made a joke and say, if we could only share with Tanzania, maybe something would change.
Right, and we've seen also the executive has been clawing back on some of his freedoms and policies and legislations we've been having in the constitution when it comes to the issue of attorney general as well. With that, attorney general's being
Auditor.
the auditor general, yes. The bill itself.
Debarl, I wanted
they really want to strip down on his powers.
I wanted to tell something, Debarl, about the reforming parastatals. There was general excitement in the country. Everybody was excited that at long last, now this is done. Everybody was waiting for that report to come out. And the Abdikadir and his team did a good job. But I think what happened is that from where my colleagues come from, parastatals is where the people, you remember when they say that anybody who will aspire and lose, this serikali ni kubwa haishindwi. So you see, this is where these people end up. And you see, if the head of state maybe would have touched that area. I'm not a sympathizer of Jubilee or the opposition, but if he would have touched that area, I'm sure my colleague here knows the repercussions. The guys who actually were part of the whole thing, politically correct, are the guys who are given these assignments on many occasions. And it was a noble idea which was a platform to which the president was elected. And actually it excited everyone in terms of moving to the next level. Now, it has not happened. We don't know the government accounts. We don't know whether that report will ever be implemented or not. We don't know whether the technical institutions my colleague is talking about will come to see the light. Now we are depending on development organizations like RTI, USAID to come up with TVETs and try to train a few guys here. Debarl, I'm sure you were in my regime when we were growing up and we were in class. We knew what a hacksaw is. We knew how to do. We knew all their names. Debarl, I knew how to stitch at that particular stage. But right now, these guys even do not know how to make a bed.
All right. Yes.
Debarl, you are mentioning a very important issue of the Auditor General. the Auditor General has been independent constitutionally and has done a splendid job. The time the Jubilee regime realized that it was going deeper on the issues of the borrowed money, the Eurobond. And you see, Debarl, if the president waves at you, smiling, he has sent a signal to his handlers that this is a good man. If he scorns at you, he has told his dogs that follow this person. Those are the languages of presidency. Why are they following the Auditor General? Governors have been crying against the Auditor General. I've been looking at those reports done by the Auditor General. I mean, dealing with blow by blow with the governors on corruption, ineptitude. And when the Auditor General, who is a constitutional office, moves on, they craft some funny allegations, then the DPP looks at them, he finds that they can't wash at the court. What does it do? They look for some other peace body to bring a petition. When a petition is brought to the relevant committee of parliament, the petitioner, the rules and the standing orders require that that petitioner provide evidence against the allegations of an officer. Did he do that? No. Where did the committee go? They go to the EACs again to fish for more evidences, which is outside the standing orders of parliament, to pin who is very independent. So you can see how we're working. Secondly, my friend here, the professor, is mentioning that the president is a good man and we blame his handlers. No. The president is the weak president. I don't think he's competent for this job. He started from being a DPM and he was the leader of opposition. In fact, I was in the campaign team of the president in 2002. I was in the inner circle.
So is he weak constitutionally or is he weak?
No, he's weak as a president now. As a president, he's a very weak president.
Okay.
And I call him incompetent to some extent. You remember I brought a motion of impeachment against the president for violating up to 16 clauses of the constitution. But because the originating house is the National Assembly, I spoke to my colleagues in the opposition that now I brought you the relevant requirements to deal with the impeachment of the president. But my colleagues, because they are just like the government, the opposition is like the Jubilee regime, coupled with both corruption and everything, they just refused because I couldn't have brought it from the Senate. So this idea that the president is a good man, it is handlers, no. Those handlers give a brief. For instance, the NSIs gives a minute-to-minute details of the happenings in the country to the president. Does he follow that? No. So these are issues, and if you look at the issues of like my friend was talking about, why do we have the public servants still in offices, and almost 60% of the functions have been devolved to counties? If you got the Minister of Agriculture, if it had maybe 700 people, they are still there. What do they do? If you got a devolved function like the health ministry, which is heavily devolved, all the cadres from the sweepers and all those other things are still there, and the budget, as he has mentioned, is still the same. For instance, when we were devolving the function of health, I was the only senator who refused the devolution of healthcare only. I was telling my colleagues, if we have to devolve, let's just devolve primary health care for the governors. TB, treatment of malaria and everything. But no, some of the senators were excited that let's devolve everything because it's our role. When the devolution was done, did the functions for us by the constitution? I mean, the funds for us by the constitution? No. We are castigating doctors who we've spent lots of money to train on issues which many Kenyans don't understand because they're ignorant. What the doctors are asking are not salaries per se. Doctors who are asking for the infrastructure to work.
So what you're saying essentially is that the transfer of functions have not been transferred.
The funds have not followed from the national government. The centralists have really stifled those functions.
But what he says here actually, if we maybe just pick up a bit of the president's speech, he says, my administration has also accelerated the transfer of functions. You can read it. And personnel to the county governments in accordance with Article 187 and the 4th schedule of the Constitution. As we march forward, we will build a stronger framework for intergovernmental cooperation and to resolve any challenges that emerge. To this end, I have directed the Attorney General in consultation with the Council of Governors to review the scope and mandate of Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee. It seems to me this is a working...
That's empty rhetoric. I've just told you that IFMIS is operationalist out of almost 10 aspects for our working. And on the issues of health, for instance, how does national government go to procure the equipment and lump them down to the counties without the approval of the county itself, without the county assembly?
Thank you. Thank you.
It's-
All right. I want us also to wrap up on a bit of the wage bill by looking at the commission, because the president also said, if we may pick up on this also, undoubtedly constitutional bodies should be held to account in the fulfillment of their mandates. However, it should be remembered that attempts to subvert these constitutional frameworks damages our democracy, undermines the rule of law, and weakens our institutional development and our nation. Could we just drill deeper and look at some of the commissions that we have in this country, and if truly we need these commissions in the first place, right? How many commissions do we have so far? 13 of them. We can actually enumerate them and see what are their functions as well, right? Could we start there?
Now, the
Joshua?
idea, the concept of having the commissions was a noble idea.
Yes.
The main thing was you needed to have independent entities that would have the independence when it comes to operationalizing all these key functions. And I think we shouldn't fight the idea. The idea was good, but we should rather be doing an audit. Have they stood up to their respective roles? And there are those that you will acknowledge they have done their work. Let me be specific. In 2013, the key challenge was, now that we were now introducing the two levels, these two levels of government, two particular commissions were important. The Commission on Revenue Allocation and the Controller of Budgetary Allocation. Those two were critically important in the sense that, one, they had to dictate how much is being devolved, and to some extent they did well. The Controller of Budget did well until, I think, the Eurobond, then something happened, when she was the first one who brought the question, and immediately the executive fought him. My only concern has been, the main thing has been, I feel, an executive arm that has been reluctant to let them work. To be specific, an entity that has tried to stifle any form of encroachment and insisting on their independence, one of the bigger threats they always face is the issue of money, how much they will get in terms of budget. Let me take you back to SRC. In 2013, SRC was breathing fire. SRC was seemingly active and it was keen to tame the wage bill. What happened? The first fight they had was with the legislators, and the first thing the legislature told them point blank, in the first instance, you the budget you are going to give is only 500M. And I think that is where we set the bad tone, in the sense that it ended up being, even at some point, the deputy president had to call SRC to his office, call the members of parliament, and broker a deal. The moment we had that trajectory, soon after it became, you have these independent commissions. They are kind of reluctant. They are kind of having their handbrakes on. In as much as they want to be independent, they still feel, okay, we shouldn't also, in a way, annoy the big brother. Even the EACC, you always see them acting reluctantly. It seems they have to get some approval from the executive. So at the end of the day, you and I cannot see the essence of independence. That's why now increasing calls for, why do we still need them? Importantly, why do they still have a number of staffers? But the beauty about also these commissions, some of them were transitional. If you remember those that were there and their terms lapsed, if you remember the one on the implementation commission, if we could have such specific timelines, I still feel quite a number of those commissions would have worked. Now, those that are permanent and are here, I'm ready to give them a benefit of doubt that in the next, in these first 5 years, they are grappling with the new change of regime in terms of, one, we had a new government coming in 2013. Importantly, we had the two systems of governance coming up. But it's only that from 2017, post-2017, now they have a bigger, they seem to have found their feet. But my only problem is, how much are they going to be independent from the executive? How much can they act without fear? The Auditor General's office has shown that it can be done. The only problem, as the Senator was saying, the moment the moment you have a commission or an entity trying to stamp its authority, it is kind of a choreographed move. The ruling regime kind of sends out, as he calls them, sends out its dog. I don't understand up to this point why the Auditor General is in Parliament before a parliamentary commission. The DPP gave a clear report. Why is he there? Then it would mean simply because he's working. Simple.
But we should also ask ourselves, do we need these commissions also on a full-time basis? Because also this has been an ongoing debate on whether we should have them full-time or on part-time basis.
But
because
that has
how
been,
much tax also and salaries they gobble.
But that has been implemented. To be specific, are you not aware, for example, the EACC, the chair and the other commissioners are on a part-time basis?
But this is not across the board. We want across the board. Yeah?
There was a recommendations that the number of commissioners to be reduced to 3 by the legislature. But the only problem, that particular recommendation or such a particular push was at the time the parliament had a fight with these commissions, and after that the whole thing died out. If indeed that could be done for 3,
right,
fine, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
So you can come and bellyache here, Mheshimiwa, but still at the end of the day also, you're contributing to this particular failure or stalemate we are with when you're fighting these commissions as well. When we have good legislations, yet you know, because maybe of your political expediency or you want to benefit from that, you scuttle the whole process yourself.
I agree with you that the biggest tragedy in this country, I went to parliament to study, but the greatest challenge and the greatest tragedy for this country is parliamentarians themselves. They do not follow through what we speak during the campaign periods.
All right.
And that's why you see there's a lot of issues affecting Kenyans. And the biggest problem also for Kenyans is the memory lane. Our memory lapse, I think, is too short to follow through issues. And because this psych has been mastered by politicians that they can say this today, tomorrow nobody follows to this. This is an election year here. What maybe most of us spoke 4 years ago. The Kenyans who gave us these jobs might have forgotten about most of those things. It's important that they wake up to say, what did everybody speak? What the national government speak was going to do? For instance, the government of the Jubilee regime spoke to the issues of laptops. Have they done that? To the kids of Standard 1? No. The issues of talking about giving electricity to the country, all over the country. Where is the generation?
All right, let's leave it at that. I want us also to draw attention to the star, and you tell me, you MPs, MCAs salaries to be cut after August polls. First of all, we had also the legislators really gagging for increments as they are actually exiting right now. Do you think this is actually going to work? Coming in the next also administration?
Why do you think all MCAs and MPs will support that? Since independence, 70% of members of parliament go home. So those who are crapping that, oh, we want it cut, some of them will already make it back to parliament. And it's just they want to hoodwink the citizenry. And I've just spoken to the issue that this is an interim report. They have to fine-tune that report. Then it needs to be adopted, across the board. I don't think whether Sarah Sarema has enough time now for the next 5 months to fine-tune that thing, to bring it to parliament for adoption, and then she gazettes it. But that's the best way to go. That's the best. I've just said that if you want to come to parliament to make money, you're in a wrong place. You come to parliament in county assemblies to do social work. What do you require to get is just allowances, small allowances to enable you work. If you want to come to parliament to make money, then that's why I said you need, if you want to become a business, do business. But parliament, all over, are places where people have been called to do social work.
All right. I want us now to focus as we're winding up on the issue of security, and I will draw your attention also to the speech of the president, where he said that in 2011, we made a historic decision. We sent our men and women across the border in pursuit of an enemy dedicated to the destruction of our motherland. Since then, in collaboration with regional and international allies, we have robbed the enemy of territory, resources, and control over people. Still, the threat remains, and therefore we continue our mission in Somalia. We know that if we fight the enemy in Somalia, we won't have to fight them here at home. Then it goes on to say our agreement as part of AMISOM has yielded significant success. We have degraded the capacity of Al-Shabaab to carry out large-scale attacks in Kenya and elsewhere. Our efforts have led to the establishment of successive civilian governments in Somalia, including the recently concluded successful and peaceful election of President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed Farmajo, as he's called. So in our defense of our motherland and in fulfilling our international obligation to pursue peace and security, we have lost some of our gallant soldiers. This loss reminds us of a threat that is upon us. And he says, I stand here, of course, today to say that the gallant sons and daughters of Kenya have not fallen in vain. We remain unbowed. Kenya shall prevail, and our democracy will endure. And of course, reading on, he said that, yes, our soldiers will still remain in Somalia. First of all, we know that Japan is also pulling away the troops from Somalia towards the end of this year. We know next year also AMISOM will be pulling out of Somalia. We are part of AMISOM. So I fail to understand why we still remain in Somalia, and AMISOM have stated they will pull out of Somalia. So can we conclude with this particular statement from the President, with our soldiers in Somalia, is there any rhyme or reason why they should be there if these other troops are pulling away?
I think that particular discourse has been severely muted. Since the attack in El Ade early last year and the Kulbio, the discussion about Somalia has been muted, and kinda it's like the official line is don't go there, don't talk about it. And I feel that is the lowest we can get when it comes to patriotism. As a country, and I always admire when you look at other countries, when they even lose one soldier, it becomes a day of national mourning.
Sure.
In Kulbio, we lost quite a number. We don't even know the numbers. El Ade, we were never given official numbers.
But
In fact, we only saw, the only gesture we saw, which according to me was smaller than what the sacrifice those guys gave, is when, after El Ade, the only thing when the coffins were coming and they were draped in flags, but funerals were done quietly. We never had maybe even 3-4 days of national mourning about that. And out of that, we've never discussed about the strategic and the geopolitical interests we have in Somalia. More importantly, if you look at the reason why we went there, possibly we could say it made sense, but at the same time, did we have a timeline? When were we supposed to exit? What objective were we seeking to achieve? Have we ever had that discussion? Has government either come up and tell us that this is one key thing that we need to achieve? Have we achieved that? And according to me, I think it is time that discussion is held even in Parliament. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about our geopolitical interests. If indeed AMISOM is pulling out, then we have no business staying out there.
Samar, what do you think? Should we pull out? Should we stay? Briefly, as we're winding up.
I think I'm not a specialist in security matters, but I think as our neighbors, we are doing what any good neighbor would do. However, like my colleague said, we should have an exit strategy on when is it now that we exit. Yeah, for me that is my feeling.
So is it appalling that yes, we had the previous regime without an exit strategy? Now they picked the baton, and yet they're yet to pass the baton to maybe President Mong'are here. Will you have an exit strategy yourself?
Before I answer that, Debarl, our military martyrs were buried somehow in a very funny way. There should be an exit strategy as of now. We've done much. We need also to be at the borders. We've managed to go inside. But the Debarl, you saw the UN report a year ago. Much of these military generals are involved in every corruption. There are deals which are done. I don't know what the beneficiaries on this side. But we need, as my colleague here, the Learned Council has mentioned, if a soldier is not accounted for by the commander-in-chief, then there's something very, very wrong. We need to reassess our stay in Somalia.
Thank you. Right. Kassim.
I think the country has not been at war for a long time, and I think this was the first test. And to me, they have done a good job. However, I think they need to redraw the strategy, because you remember in academics, the logical framework approach came from the military. And the logical framework approach gives you what the outcome will be, the objectives clearly, and the deliverables per se. But here, I think we just went in. But how to think about coming out has never been thought through, because we have lost quite a number of soldiers. The strategy, I think, was along the way discovered by the enemy, and things happened. But I believe that it was a good initiative to go there in the first place. But now we need to secure our borders.
Thank you. Thank you.